Hey, what's going on, guys? Turk here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do 5 alpha beta cards that got better with Arthurian Legends. These aren't just cards that got better because a lot of cards get better when you add cards to the card pool, but mostly cards that kind of weren't very popular. I won't say unplayable, but definitely at the very least on the fringe of the format. And with the Arthurian Legends release, have kind of found homes in some pretty staple decks. So we're going to get into it right away. We're going to do number 5 at Assorted Animals. So it's an X casting cost spell. Search your spellbook for different beasts with a combined mana cost of X. You reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle. This card got good because there is a heavy emphasis on beasts in Arthurian Legends. And in particular, there's a lot of cheap beasts because you really don't want to use this card to fetch really high mana value stuff, because then you're spending a lot of mana just to add the card to your hand and you're not really playing it. But when you have a lot of 1 and 2 mana beasts, you can put 5 mana into this and you get 3 to 5 cards, and that's really fantastic. The release of Hamlet also makes it so those ordinary beasts are going to cost less, so you can maybe even summon a few of them the turn you play this, and it will improve your board state. I also wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk about the cycle that was in Arthurian Legends, because I really like talking about cycles and looking at how they influence design and the color pie of the game. There is a cycle of 1 mana airborne beasts, which coincidentally also means that Highland Falconer got better. But we're not talking about him because he was already in a lot of decks, so we're gonna get him out of here. But the Grain Sparrow, the Owl, the Redbreast Robin, and the Thieving Magpie are all these 1 mana, 1 power airborne beasts, and they do a thing related to their element. So the Sparrow heals you, the Owl is a Summoning Sphere effect, Robin deals damage, and the Magpie steals things. There's a lot of other cheap stuff too. You've got the Squeakers, the Sly Fox, the Squirrel, if that's relevant. And with this in your deck, with the Assorted Animals in your deck, you can pile up mana into this and just draw a ton. And again, with Hamlet, you get to play these guys down. Sylvan Splendor is a card that we're going to see later in this video as well. That's a house with these types of beasts because you just cycle through your deck very quickly. And this is the kind of environment where Assorted Animals thrives, where you have all these cheap beasts that you can grab, and some of them, especially these guys, the airborne beasts, can really impact the board, or sometimes you want one of these effects. I think it's really crazy that Owl, you can now tutor up a Summoning Sphere. It's not as good as Summoning Sphere, surely, but most people only play 1 or 2 because Summoning Spheres are kind of dead later in the game, or if you already have one. So Owl kind of just helps out your consistency without having to overdo it on Summoning Spheres. So moving on next, number 4 is Orb of Bal Bareth. Now the Orb is another card that it saw fringe play along with the Assorted Animals. Those are the 2 that I think were really on the fringe of playability. I mostly saw Orb in Geomancer decks, surprisingly, because you wouldn't think of Earth as the magic element. But doubling Crater Eyes was really crazy, and Border Militia too was really insane. But with Arthurian Legends, we got a whole avatar who wants to pile magics into the deck so that you can recast them. They'll go to your cemetery, you recast them in Archimago. Orb is just an absolute house in an Archimago deck, and Arthurian Legends just have this spell slinger archetype going, where you have Merlin, who is a unique spellcaster, and he can just churn through magics off the top of your spell book. Now Orb only copies the first magic, so it's not that great with Merlin, but who cares if you're only copying 1 spell a turn? That's still incredible. We got Arcane Barrage, which is kind of gonna do the Crater Eyes thing, but in air now, so you have a lot more flexibility how you want to dump your mana for orb to like do crazy stuff, and guards, which is like, I won't call it a better border militia because it is twice the cost, but you can get up to 9-foot soldiers with this thing, and orb will make that 18, and that's just insane value. And we're touching the tip of the iceberg here, because there's other great magics to double with orb, like Tithe if for some reason you want 6 sights in hand, Feast for Crows, and Valor, which I think would be pretty cool given an ally plus 8 power to defend. Yeah, Orb and Assorted Animals, these are the 2 cards that, like, they were sort of on the fringe of playability. They weren't necessarily bad, but they are absolute houses in the decks that want them now. Number 3, we have Drums of Doom. Now, this was a bad card in Drums of Doom. I mean, you could, like, do the thing with Rain of Arrows where, like, you kind of lethal ping the board, but then you're, like, playing 2 bad cards in hopes of combining them to do, like, a kind of cool thing, but nothing that's going to win you the game outright anyways. But Drums got a whole lot better with Druid, specifically the flipped Druid, who pings things whenever they enter nearby sites. Because that ping with a drums nearby is going to be a lethal ping, and they're just going to die. So Druid is able, with the drums, is able to just stall you out. You can't attack Druid until you're able to deal with the drums. You have to draw your disenchant, or maybe you have some artifact removal. There was a good number of cards that can do that in AL, so maybe you have that. But, like, if you don't have any of that, I hope you have burn, because you're not attacking Druid sites anymore. And that's really just, like, for a control Druid deck. But Druid can go aggro. And when you're playing the 1-mana beasts in combination with Sylvan Splendor, which is the card that really makes these cheap beasts so good, now these, like, 2 1-power beasts are, like, threatening to trade with your 4-power minions because the drums are nearby. So, like, they have lethal. And, you know, you're drawing off of the Sylvan Splendor. These decks load the deck with 1-mana beasts. And if you have a Hamlet, it's 0 mana, and you're just kind of going to town, just, like, churning through your deck, putting out insane pressure. And Drums of Doom really just enables this, because you're not just playing 2-power minions, who honestly, when you have like 12 of them, is pretty scary on its own, but now they also trade with all of your best stuff. So I hope you have a sweeper, but even, like, it's really good in Druid. I'm yet to see a Druid list that isn't playing drums. Moving on. Number 2, Primordial Spring. Now, this one requires some story time, because I used to play around with this card back in the day. I thought it was really good. Drawing 3 sites, you basically put this down, and you never had to draw a site again. It was kind of brutal, though, because you had to be 2 sites down on your opponent, because the Genesis will apply after it enters. So, like, if you have less sites and then Primordial Spring, like, equalizes it, you don't get that trigger. Yeah, this card was just borderline unplayable because you put yourself at such a disadvantage. And that might be the case, honestly, still. But when I uploaded the Circle of Land Druid video, someone in the comments actually suggested playing Primordial Spring, and I had totally forgot that this card had existed at that point. But the reason it's making the list here is because Stone Rain got printed. Now, Stone Rain is 4 mana, target a site up to 2 steps away, and you deal 1 damage to everything atop it, repeating for each site in your hand. So Primordial Spring is going to draw you 3 sites, and that's going to add 3 damage to all of your Stone Rains. And that just seems really fun. I don't really think Stone Rain is going to be a staple of the format like Drums of Doom are, or like basically any of these other cards that I've shown so far are. But Primordial Spring was like near unplayable before, and at least now it like has a home like in a niche deck. See, the other cards here went from like being niche to like being really good, and this one's going from like unplayable to being niche. So in terms of like how upgraded it got, I feel like it's kind of equal, even though you really probably won't see this card that often. But it's also worth mentioning that there was a lot of site destruction that got printed in Arthurian Legends, and I've seen a lot of good decks that are attacking the opponent's mana, and Primordial Spring could be a really cute answer to that, where like after you get Hamlet's Ablaze or Year of the Blaze, you know, heavens forbid, you can play this and get your sites back and hopefully you know, recover a lot easier with a Primordial Spring. Number 1 is Dream Quest. So Dream Quest was really bad in beta. Now apparently back in like the alpha days you could cast this on your avatar, but I never played during those days, so I don't know how crazy it was. But Dream Quest, an allied spellcaster, they fall asleep and they're disabled until hurt. And then at the start of your next turn, if they're still asleep, you can wake it up and you get any card out of your spellbook and you put it into your hand. You don't have to reveal it. There's no restriction, any card, and then you shuffle. It was really bad because the opponent, like, you just put a big target on your spellcaster and your opponent would usually kill it or at least wake it up. But if they kill it, you just 2-for-1'd yourself. You're not getting a card out of this Dream Quest. You lose your spellcaster and you lose your Dream Quest. It was the easiest 2-for-1 in the world for the opponent because most spellcasters aren't exactly very resilient. Like a Desert Ping kills most of them. So this card was like not real. Like your deck was worse if you were playing Dream Quest, even if you like had a plan to make it work. But Dream Quest is really good again because Druid exists. And it's kind of reminiscent of those alpha days where you could cast Dream Quest on your avatar. Because Druid, when he plays a site, he summons Tawny, and Tawny is a spellcaster. So you can turn 1 Dream Quest again if you play an air site, summon Tawny, and then Dream Quest putting Tawny to sleep. It is very unlikely that your opponent is going to be able to wake up Tawny on their turn 1, just because they won't have the mana and they really like won't have any way to reach Tawny. The best chance they have would be a tower on 1 into a lightning bolt, and then it's a coin flip. So very unlikely. And even if you don't have it in turn 1, which you won't most of the time, it's still not bad later in the game because that dreaded 2-for-1 that you were giving your opponent before just becomes a 1-for-1 because Tawny's a token. You get it back. It doesn't cost you a card. And Dream Quest is 1 mana, so even if it's a 1-for-1, they're probably spending like 3 mana to kill Tawny, and like that's mana advantage to you. You're hurting their next turn because you played Dream Quest for 1 mana and you still have basically all of your mana to do anything for the rest of your turn. So Dream Quest in a Druid deck, I am like always looking to cast, or I'm sorry, not cast. I'm always looking to splash air in Druid because I want to play Dream Quest in Druid. I don't think you need to if you can't afford to. If you're doing something and you can't afford the air, then like don't. But like Dream Quest, I think is like an auto include in any Druid deck that can run air. And for that reason, I'm putting it as number 1 for like the most improved card from Alpha Beta. Let me know your thoughts on these cards. If you have other suggestions that like you would have put on this list. A lot of cards did get better. It's not just 5, but I was really trying to look at like cards that were not so like guys. Yes, Highland Princess got better. You know, Highland Falconer, like I said, got Common Sense got better. But these were good cards already. I was really trying to think of like the bad cards. And so, yeah, let me know what your thoughts if you like this kind of video. Like I said, it was really quickly made. I kind of just did it at work. But if you want to see more, let me know. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I hope you guys have a great day.